think about our district specifically, our district has, never served Black children well. Even when they first started, there was one Black school, and
Before we dive into the meat of exactly what you guys do, when you think of Pittsburgh, I want each one of you to tell me what's the first thing to come to mind.
Steelers, of course. You are in the city of champions.
Oh, here we go.
Stairway to 7. So, of course, the Steelers.
Okay.
But I would say, in addition to that, we were at one point a burgeoning steel city, but, now I think the transition has happened to meds and eds, arts, entertainment. Of course, we're known as the city of bridges. We have, I think, the most bridges of like any city ever. Our 3 rivers. And then like a lot of hidden Black history as well. A lot of famous folks that made their start in Pittsburgh as well.
So being able to see that transition in real time, go from 1 or 2 or 3 industries that maybe no longer exist to the now, how's that been looking for you?
Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is that in all of those transitions, how Black people were sort of left out. So we know that when the steel mills were here, Black people actually sometimes couldn't get jobs in the mills. My father tells a story of how white steel workers, when they had a son, they would buy their son a union card, and that son would become a union member. And so by the time he was 18 and could go to work, he had 18 years of union seniority. And so Black men coming off the streets couldn't compete with that. So when I think about the steel industry, when I think about eds and neds, I'm always like, it's really clear to me that Black people have been left out of that.
That's crazy to hear from that side of it.
Yep.
Like, why is it so important for, you guys doing what you do here in Pittsburgh? Like, why is it like we must do this?
I think for some of the reasons that Tracey mentioned, we have been systematically excluded from so much in our city. And so when you think about our district specifically, our district has, never served Black children well. Even when they first started, there was one Black school, and they had to actually go under the control of the district because they were just not doing what they needed to do. And so, we could, count the history, but, it took them like 100 years to even get one Black teacher. That came as a result of a state representative, doing an investigation and kind of like putting the district on blast, like, hey, you need to get this together in terms of Black educators. But more recently, the district has been involved in a 32-year lawsuit with Black advocates for their inability to educate Black children. They came to an agreement in 2006, and since then they have these memoranda of understanding where they say, we'll do these things will get better, but they haven't, so they just renew them. And so, literally, Black generations of Black children are just dying or, being undereducated, not being able to access opportunities because of our subpar school district. So it's personal. And we're both Black mothers. We're mothers of Black children.
I love that
as well.
What do you feel like could be one of the most effective ways to affect change?
So we started by thinking about our school board and we reached out to our school board when we found that things weren't going the way we thought they should go, and we did not hear back from them. And so so right now we have actually a majority of the school board are now members who were endorsed by Black Women for a Better Education. So that's sort of our first step. The other thing I think is really important for us to do, and the thing that we are especially equipped to do, is to help people understand what they don't yet know, right? To help people understand that a nice teacher is absolutely necessary, but wholly insufficient. You have to have a nice and effective teacher. So I think that Black people in Pittsburgh have for so long been on the, end of sort of people not treating them well. So when you're in a place where people are nice and it looks really pretty and all of that stuff, then we're a little bit more satisfied than we should. And so I think that that's the other thing that we're especially equipped to do, is to really reach Black people, especially Black moms, and help them understand what's happening in our district.
I think what you guys are doing is extremely important, because it takes some plotting, planning, and strategizing. And to be strategic, I think that's the most effective way, because you could, my show, Thoughts and Visions. I want to put thought into what I say. I want to have effective communication. I don't just want to get on camera and just talk to Tom, Dick, and Harry. I want to talk to individuals who are critical thinkers, so we can inform the public on what it is that they don't know. That's my thought. That's my vision. I want to just play devil's advocate here a little bit. I'm a Clevelander. Looking in from the outside. I'm a Clevelander. Looking in from the outside.
I'm sorry.
I see, like in Cleveland, certain areas, certain pockets, you may see interracial dating, interracial marriages. For some reason here, it seems to be more of it. You take in real time, since in my adulthood, they took down the Confederate flag. So I look at things in real time, like, are we coming closer together? Or are we still miles apart? Do you feel like, you said 32 years? Is it coming closer together, or we're still in Pittsburgh miles apart?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So, one thing about Pittsburgh, like, we're a very neighborhood-oriented city. So we have 91, 95, somewhere in the 90s, unique neighborhoods in our city. So we are physically and geographically separated. A lot of those communities are predominantly Black, predominantly white. Of course, we can attribute that to redlining. We know that there were places in our city where, Black people were relegated to. I grew up in a neighborhood that was a place where it's for Black folks, so did Tracey. We also have some historical Black neighborhoods that were decimated. So when you think about our Hill District, for example, where a lot of, jazz and even the Renaissance was happening, the city decided that we needed an arena. And so they decided to displace 8,000 families, 400 businesses to build an arena in a Black community. And it's a community that literally bridges kind of the east, central east of our city to our downtown. So, are we coming closer together? I think physically, geographically, not as much. I think that, while Pittsburgh, when you think about even our state, is pretty blue, when I'm talking,
Yes.
Politically,
Yes.
And of course, Philadelphia being a part of our state, but, kind of in between, that big rectangle is, a very rural farm state. And even if you kind of go right outside of our city, and then also I think just, even in this city, I think some of the most well-meaning white people in this city still do not understand or recognize or even acknowledge some of these historical factors that we're referring to. So the result of redlining, the inability for Black folks to own homes, what that means then for the quality of schools that we have. And so, I think there's still so much information to be had or to be learned, things for us to bring awareness to. We have been fortunate that there are some white folks that have, come alongside us and said, hey, we actually want to learn. Please help us to learn. And part of it is we'll bring you along the journey, but also Google's free because we're not going to wait before you. So, but nonetheless, it's still just, I think, a heavy live for our city. And to Tracy's point, there are, when those little carrots get thrown out, unfortunately, as Black folks, we do get, complacent, or we believe that there's certain things that we can have and certain things we can't. We just got our first Black mayor in history in 2021. So Pittsburgh has a long way to go.
That's insane.
Right.
The first
Black mayor, yeah. And I think that white people and Black people in Pittsburgh are, there are still huge chasms in how much we earn. And when you look at sort of educational outcomes, there's huge differences in how Black people live and how white people live. Home ownership and health, and like Black maternal health. When you look at those things in Pittsburgh, that, as much as we may have progressed in some ways, I can't think of the ways that we have, but as much as we may have progressed, we are still, there are still huge chasms in just outcomes for the Black people and white people in Pittsburgh.
I want to ask each one of you, so if I was to award you the keys of the city, and they said it could be 3 things that you could change immediately about Pittsburgh, what would that be?
Okay.
Just right off top, just 3 things that you could think of that could just change the narrative or change exactly what we stand for, what you're fighting for.
Yeah, I would say, the first thing, I'm dismantling the school district. Like, we are starting from scratch. We're bringing, Black mothers, Black families to the table to figure out, what do we need school to look like? We're going to build this from the ground up, and it's gonna be an ecosystem. It's not just going to be a whole bunch of brick and mortar. It's going to be some homeschooling, some co-ops. Like, we're just going to build a whole new learning ecosystem for the city. We're going to ensure that everybody has access to housing, like making sure that, folks have safe places to live, living in safe neighborhoods, like, access to home ownership. That's a huge piece. And we're going to ensure that folks have a living wage. And, I know we've been talking about the fight for 15, like it got to be more than that. Like, actually, when they put out all those nice little maps and charts about, like...
Wait a minute, hold on. What is that exactly? When they say the fight for 15?
So basically, fighting for people to make at least $15 an hour. So, like, that's been a push for years, in terms of, like, raising the minimum wage. And Pennsylvania hasn't raised its minimum wage in, I don't know how long. I think we're one of the last states that hasn't made any significant progress. But, at least for the past, decade or so, like, folks have been fighting to get to $15 an hour. But when we look at inflation and what's actually needed to, maintain and to, be able to rent or own a home or to take care of your family, the number is probably double that.
Oh,
but they always have those charts that come out that say, like, if you live in this city or in this place, like, the average amount you need to, whatever it is, like, let's make sure people have it.
Right. And I love that point that you made, because you can have a roof over your head, but if your environment is not safe, if you step outside that door and there's a war zone, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I echo the need to we need to rethink school. We need to rethink what the school day, the school year, all of it. Like, all of that needs to be just completely rethought, and it needs to be rethought and organized based on how brains work. Like, just very simply.
Did you say based on how brains
work?
Now, I want to stop you right there.
Okay.
My wife and I have had conversations probably within the last 3 months or so, and I truly believe on how a person receives information is IQ. It's like reading comprehension. It's like you can have an individual that may read a page and they pick it up immediately, like this. That may be the A student. You might read something, reading comprehension, and understand something. You tell me something and I pick it up, not like this, but like that. That's the B student. C, D, it's kind of like levels. The C student might catch it like it might be 10 seconds, or I might need to read it 3 or 4 times before I catch it. Is it how the information is being put out? Is it the instructor? Is it a little bit of the learning curve upon the student?
Right. So the one thing that we need to recognize is there's not anyone who's inherently A, B, C, D. Like, we made that up.
Yes.
We made that up. So there's not anybody who is born and has to live as C, right? Or D or F, if you think about Black kids in Pittsburgh. So that's the first thing. When you think about, like, when I say based on how brains work, when we learn something as an adult, when we learn things as children, we typically don't have somebody tell us something and boom, we know it. We don't know things based on someone telling us. We know things based on experience, based on investigation, based on probing, based on just curiosity about that thing. And that's how that's the things that schools should elevate. So
how does that look?
When
you think about that, how would you?
It looks like, and I don't want to use a whole bunch of jargon, but it looks like project-based learning. So when you learned to drive a car, you read the book, but when you got in the car, you had to learn to drive the car.
Sure.
Right? When you learn to read, we could go ABC all day, but you had to sit with a book and engage with that book. And really, it is allowing children the freedom to engage deeply with content. And honestly, it happens in lots of schools. Like, you could go to schools all around this region and see that happening. Those children are usually white, because somehow we trust white children to be able to learn in, like, less sort of structured ways. When we go into Black classrooms with Black kids are sitting in rows, they are quiet, there's a teacher talking to them, they are doing their little things, and that's what we say is good school. That's not good school.
That's a slave mentality.
It is a very controlled, we work really hard to control Black kids. And when you're learning something, it's typically not a controlled environment. You are investigating and you're thinking and you're questioning, but we don't allow Black kids to do that. And that's what schools should look like. If we're really gonna have schools where people emerge and they're able to do the hard work of being an adult, and we say that schools preparing them for that, then it needs to look very different. And we need to trust Black kids to just be free.
Allow them to be creative.
Yes.
Allow them to be able to explore. Allow
them to run. Allow them to, to stand up. I've gone to schools where kids in the cafeteria aren't allowed to talk. They have silent lunch. I never see that with white kids. White kids are allowed to talk, and they're allowed to get up and get a juice and talk to their friend and, go play on the playground.
I attest that to this. If you force little Tommy to be there and be quiet, little Tommy is coming back to that cafeteria with an AK-47. He's going to shoot up everything. So I get the feeling that you guys, education is the key to everything. Education is the key to change, the knowledge.
It is. And we have to educate people to understand that $15 an hour is, like, that's fine for your kid who lives in your house and you pay their bills, but it's not okay for somebody trying to raise a family.
Is that even for, like, individuals who hold degrees? Are they trying to say, hey, you got an associate's or a bachelor's? Let me toss you this 15. Is that what they're really?
There's some.
I think capitalism is always trying to figure out how to, make sure that, us lowly people, are not able to, ever, be to, have a quality of life. I mean, that's a whole thing.
And childcare workers.
Yeah.
people who work in pre-K,
Yeah.
they make 15, I think the average is like $15 or $17 an hour here in the state of Pennsylvania. And many of them, most of them, if you have a high quality childcare center, most of your employees have an associate's or a bachelor's degree.
That's
And they make-
required. Is this starting to be a requirement?
It's, well, in order for you to have a certain level of, it's a whole quality system.
Yes.
And lots of things depend on it. But if you have a high quality center where you're going to get as much funding from state as you can, then you have to have people who are
Makes
teaching
sense.
there who have associates.
Certifications.
And they make $15 or $17 an hour.
Right, and then they're paying, trying to pay back a degree that costs tens of thousands of dollars, and so.
You'll never be able to do it.
No, you're not in. I mean, I think we have this idea that like, oh, they're just babysitting. No, these are people who are literally investing in some of the most formative years of a child's life. We know that even the disparities that exist, for children who don't have access to high quality pre-K, and then, what that means for their K-12 trajectory. I mean, they're already being set up for failure. So, we have to just rethink. And I mean, we're 100% like, yes, like pay teachers what their word, and hold them accountable. Like, we're not just going to throw, like, let's not just throw money, because there are, effective teachers. There are teachers that are not effective. But, make sure that folks do have a living wage. Make sure that they are, they have good compensation packages. Make sure that they have a strong retirement. And one thing about our district is that all of those things are true. Yep. We actually have pretty high paid teachers in our district. You can get to the top of the salary scale very quickly in Pittsburgh Public Schools. We actually have a lot of money in our school district too. We just have some serious issues around the mismanagement of it, and the folks that, have been leading our district for years that have not made great decisions with that funding, which has, of course, impacted children. So that's where our advocacy is really focused.
How do you feel how can people get involved to kind of help affect this change? Is it voting city council members, or like, how does that look moving forward?
Yeah, I think vote school board first. Know who your school board rep is, and reach out to them frequently. And then also, I think that there's sort of a dual sort of ability to, you go through the normal channels that are already in place, and then you work to disrupt some of those systems that are really problematic. And so that's part of what we try to do, is while we are getting people elected to school board, we're also trying to disrupt some of the narrative around, for example, people always think our school district is broke. We're not broke.
That's the narrative that they push.
We have a $900 million budget.
How much?
900. So we have about almost $700 million in what we call our general funds, which is taxpayer money, and then another $200 million in what's called supplemental funds, which are like kind of grants and other things. And so our school district budget is actually larger than the budget of our entire city.
Wait a minute. You talk about that number is astronomical.
So yeah, so
you talking about just
for 19,000 children. So at its peak, decades ago, PPS had 100,000 children. Currently, they have about 19,000 children. We're operating 54 schools, and we have an annual general budget of about $700 million plus another $200-some million as well. So we're talking about a ton of money. And as I said, like, that budget is bigger than our city. There's 300,000 people in Pittsburgh.
And the narrative always is, well, we spend so much money on charters. We pay
charter schools?
Charter schools. We pay so much money in charter school tuition, which is true. We do pay a lot of money, partly because we have such a high per pupil expenditure. We pay charters based on what our per pupil expenditure is. The other thing with charters, and that's a whole, we could go down a rabbit hole, but the other thing with charters is that no one wants to stand up to special education lobby to make sure that the expenditure, the tuition for kids who have special needs is commensurate with their actual needs. And so we have a flat rate that we give to anyone who has these special needs, and it's not right.
That's crazy, because I would think that stuff would be written off at the end of the year anyway. So where's the dollars? Where are the dollars going?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I mean, and I think that's our concern, and why, we push to get folks on the school board who could really help us to think about that. So, Tracey as a school board member, I mean, those are questions that she's asking. The other 4 people that, we've helped to get elected,
Did you say the other 4 people?
Yeah, so our school board has 9 members on it. And so when we first started out, we had gone to those folks and said, hey, we're concerned about what's going on. Like, you're a school board member. Like, let's talk about it. And they're like, no. And so we said, well, we do have an elected school board. And, in Pennsylvania, all public school districts do, well, Philadelphia is under state control. They're a little bit different. But nonetheless, you have the ability to elect these school board members. And so we said, well, we're going to run them. And so we started what's called a political action committee. And that is a way to raise money. And then we ran a slate of candidates. So we tried to come for their neck the first round. You need 5 seats because you need the majority. So we wanted to get all 5 seats. We were able to get 3. Then in the next round, which was 2 years later, we got 2 more. So we do have 5 people who supported on the school board. And so, with that, you're able to then sway, vote and say, okay, if these 5 people stick together, vote together, come with a united agenda, we can get some things moving. So they've been together since December. And so, I think in terms of things that we've seen, definitely, more, transparency, folks actually meeting. We're in a big conversation right now about district reconfiguration, which, does mean that schools will likely close. And I know that's a very tough conversation, especially to have in the Black community, because folks are committed to their schools and to their buildings. And okay, fine, but if your kid is going there every day and can't read, what are you committed to? Every school that's not educating kids should be closed. Full stop.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That
So
absolutely makes sense.
if we were doing as good a job by white kids as we are doing by Black kids in some of these schools, they'd already be closed. There's no way we would keep schools open that are consistently just failing generations of white people. We would not keep them open.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's not just in Pittsburgh. That'd be across the board.
Yeah. For sure.
Here's a motto that I'm starting to truly live by. Difficult conversations lead to beautiful destinations. Do you feel like it should be? Is it more people to come on board to have these conversations in unity, speaking the same words to really help affect the change? Or is it dollars behind that as well? Dollars and cents.
I mean, it's both.
Okay.
I mean, so part of our, efforts have been to mobilize folks. So, we say there's a few things, we wanted to maintain a school board majority, because when you have the 5 votes, you can get stuff done. That board is directly responsible for, hiring, evaluating a superintendent. And, that was part of, where we started this journey was we're not pleased with the previous superintendent. Please find someone else. And they were like, no. And so we're like, well, then you can go. And that's kind of how, all that got started. But then, the third area we've been focusing in on is trying to build an educated populace, folks understanding what is happening. And, because of the way that our city is, folks have been in these schools for generations. You kind of have an expectation, well, this is as good as it's going to get. Okay, but it's not. Black children are learning at high levels across town, in other school districts, around the country, and at home. Exactly. So, we're trying to just, build awareness and get people to understand that. And, to your point earlier, yes, and vote.
Yes.
Because that is an effective strategy. In Pittsburgh, to win a school board race, I mean, in some of these districts, I mean, you need 2,000 votes.
Yeah.
You got 2,000 Facebook friends. If you get them to help you knock on some doors, you can get a seat. And I think we've realized that you can run these races for pretty cheap. You can get these the majority of the people in your district, and voila, now you have a school board seat. And again, you're managing a budget larger than the city, and it's 9 people who have a very strong responsibility for the future of our city. And, you know, trying to really, you know, reverse just the generational disenfranchisement of our children. Because it's generational. Pittsburgh is one of the worst cities in America for Black women. And if it's the worst city in America for Black women, then you know dang on well it's the worst city for Black children and Black men. Like, I mean, come on, like, let's just be honest. Like, so, you know, that was a report that, you know, our Gender Equity Commission put out. And again, we didn't need, you know, these folks at university to tell Black women that the city wasn't, I'm not gonna cuss on your podcast, it was crap. But, you know, but nonetheless, I think, you know, that also just got people thinking like, oh, okay. And when you see, you know, up against like a whole list of cities and Pittsburgh's at the very bottom, it's like, this is embarrassing.
But as an outsider, what I feel from y'all is passion. What I feel like it's different. It's a different energy. It's a proudness. We standing on business type of vibe, and I love that. I love sitting down with individuals like yourself, man, because you learn so much. And like I said, this is what Thoughts and Visions is all about. Putting the knowledge out there, putting the information out there, and hoping that people really just catch on to what it is. Shoot out your social media, shoot out anything that you may, don't put a date on it. Shoot out anything that you may have be coming forward, or, you know, in the future.
Yeah, I mean, so we have a website, so you can go to bw4be.com. So that's our website. You can also find us on Facebook under Black Women for a Better Education. I think we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. So look us up, follow us. When you go to the website, there's a prompt for you to sign up for the newsletter. You know, that'll be an opportunity to see the upcoming events. You know, every 2 years in our city is a school board election. So we're always mobilizing around that. So figure out where you live in the city. Can you run? Do you want to run? You know, we will support you. You know, that's one thing our political action committee has been able to do, is support candidates with money and with manpower to get out and knock on doors and let people know what's going on. You know, and then also just, you know, general information events, like helping people to understand what the possibilities are for school, for Black children. You know, we do not have to settle for, you know, what our district gives us. You know, there are definitely opportunities for us to make things better.
Put the information out to where do people go vote if somebody's trying to run, or somebody's trying to, you know, where do they go vote? Is it libraries? Is it schools?
Yeah, so in our city, everybody who is registered to vote. So first of all, make sure you register. Like, if you literally just, you know, Google like register to vote Pennsylvania, like make sure that, you know, you're current, make sure you're registered to vote at your current address. And then if you're unsure, you can go to, you know, the PA website, type in your address, and it'll tell you where your voting precinct is. And so, you know, that it just depends on where you live. You know, Pennsylvania has also been really big around mail-in voting. So if you can't vote in person or you choose not to, there is a process for you to apply to be a mail-in voter. They'll send a ballot in the mail. You can put it, you know, back in the mail and make sure you get it in, you know, to be counted. Or, you know, a lot of times, like close to election day, you can take it down to the county office and turn it in person. But, you know, do everything in your power to make sure you get your vote in. You know, of course, like this, you know, this is a big election year. You know, but school board is not on that election cycle, but it is important to vote in every election, because even when we think about, you know, federal elections, of course, like it's important about who's running the country, and it's also important about who's running your school district and your city. And, you know, some of those other roles that, you know, are on the back of that paper or further down that ballot.
Yeah, one thing I learned when I was running for school board is you can go to the elections office and get a list of super voters, and that those are people who voted in the last 4 elections, I think. And those are the doors that we knocked.
You said super voters?
Super voters.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the doors that we knock. Those are the people that we talk to. I feel like if you are a super voter, you are going to get people who are going to come and talk to you about what you're doing. So be a super voter.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's like, you know, like the strategy, like when you're out there, and like the kind of off-season strategy is like getting even more people, you know, registered and encouraging them. I mean, because when you look at even, you know, in our federal elections, you know, sometimes you see higher voter turnout, but like when it's just like what they call like an off year, and again, I don't believe in off years when it comes to voting, but you know, like 20%, 30%, like, you know, people are posting like, oh, I went to my voting precinct, because our polls are always open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay.
Oh, I'm here at 6 p.m. I'm the 12th voter today. Come on, y'all. Like, get out. Make sure that, you know, this is something that you do. You know, people are like, oh, I don't believe in. Don't believe in what? Like, so you either going to be, what they say, at the table or on the table. Like, you pick.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what people have to understand that it's power in numbers. When we come together, that's how you affect change. And if you don't have the money, that's the best way to affect change. It's the unity. The power is in the numbers. Period. So come together. I'm not even from this black and yellow city, and I'm just telling you, come together as a people. Any parting shots before we get out of here? Anything you got?
Trust Black women.
Whew, that's strong, man.
I mean, I echo that. That's it. That's the mic drop.
All right. Well, in closing, I want to leave the people with this: keep God first, keep praying, and don't ever stop chasing your dreams. I am T. Moore. This is Thoughts and Visions. Till the next time, peace and love.